I'm going to do a very quick introduction to CERC in case some of you have never engaged with CERC before, and then a quick overview of national Nuffield research placements, and then Laura will take you through the programme in more detail. And then Graham's actually going to talk about Nuffield from a teacher perspective. So before Graham came to CERC, he was a teacher at Wallace High in Stirling, and he's going to tell you what his tips and techniques are for running Nuffield within a school. So first of all, a quick introduction to CERC. Well, who are we? We are based in Dunfermline in Fife, and our main line of business over the last few decades has actually been to provide professional learning. And this has been to teachers, to technicians, to childminders, really across the spectrum of STEM subjects and anyone who engages with young people. And there's a calendar of courses that obviously teachers, all the STEM teachers in the call will know that you book onto to learn practical skills, health and safety, etc. And that leads me into another strand of CERC, which is where we provide the advisory service. And this is really useful for teachers and technicians to make sure they're adhering to health and safety laws. It can be in relation to things like storing and using chemicals, radioactive sources, for example, and CERC and teachers can ask CERC any information, any question they have regarding health and safety, and we can obviously help our STEM ambassadors as well with that issue. But today we're here to hear from the wider STEM engagement team, and this is a suite of programmes that are really interweaving with everything that CERC does. And there's lots of programmes under the banner of wider STEM engagement. So the first one there is ESERO, which is the European Space Agency Space Champion Programme, and we've recently taken that on, and our aim is to increase young people's enthusiasm for the space sector. And that includes Teacher CPD, courses which CERC already run, but also additional courses using our STEM ambassadors, and encouraging schools, primary and secondary, to engage in space activities supported by STEM ambassadors from the space sector. So you'll see quite a bit of activity coming out about that in the next few months. Nuffield we're here to talk about today, so I'm not going to talk about that. And Young STEM Leader, I see Jamie's on the call. Many of you will have heard of the Young STEM Leader programme. It's one of CERC's flagship programmes, which has the aim of empowering and mobilising young people in both school and community settings to give them the chance themselves to inspire, lead and mentor their peers. So these young people, they deliver their own STEM activities, events, they're responsible for interaction between their schools and their different classes, and they can gain non-formal and formal awards under the Young STEM Leader programme. The STEM Ambassador programme, many of you will have heard of, and the DYW coordinators on the call, hopefully you will use STEM ambassadors more in the future. And these people are volunteers from either industry or universities and colleges who offer their time free of charge to work with schools and community groups to inspire young people in SPDM. So it could be through career talks, it could be running a STEM club, it could be contextualising the curriculum. We've got 5,500 STEM ambassadors across Scotland who are all PVG checked and trained and enabled to go into the classroom. So the DYW coordinators can create an account on the STEM Learning database, and they can actually request a teacher for their school the same way that the STEM teachers do for their classroom. And the last programme we run is called the Education Industry Partnerships, where we have employers working with a group of schools over a period of time, and they provide Teacher CPD. They have their STEM ambassadors connecting with young people, and then they will work on a STEM related challenge where the STEM ambassador supports the young people, and the Young STEM Leader Award fits into that too. So you'll hear more about our wider STEM engagement as the months go on, but that's really just a snapshot of things that are really burbling under the surface and will certainly become stronger as the months go on. Today we're here to hear about Nuffield research placements. So these are aimed at S5 students, predominantly who come from a disadvantaged background, and they've already completed S5 by next summer. So we're looking at summer 22 here, where they are then going to go out and undertake a research project in an employer's establishment or a university, and they're asked to develop a project in a real life context. And the project can be across any STEM discipline, so obviously the normal ones you would expect, physics, chemistry and biology, but we're also looking at computing, tech, data science, and even there are some projects with a social science theme as well in that sense. So the placement consists of 4 weeks, and it's 2 weeks online and 2 weeks face-to-face within a provider establishment. We are aiming for that at the moment. COVID obviously might have put a spanner in the works. Last year the projects all had to be online, but Nuffield are really, really keen that the students get back into the environment and actually spend a 2-week face-to-face experience within an establishment. And it's an excellent follow-on from a work experience placement. So again, I know the DYW coordinators are looking at work experience, and you might have some S4, S5 children, students who've gone through a work experience placement. The research placement is like the icing on the cake. It's another direction to take the young person. They've done some work experience, they've learned about the work environment, but now they're giving a specific research project to focus on and to take that forward. So the two really go hand in hand with that. And there's obviously loads of benefits for the young people. I'm sure you can work out yourself what the benefits here are going in there, but the most important ones to me is for the young person to learn how to analyse data, because they maybe don't get enough of that within the school setting. We're really trying to expose them to the research environment, maybe than traditionally a workplace environment. And learning how to produce a scientific and a technical report, which is really detailed. When you see the finished output from the students, it's actually mind-blowing what a young person's able to produce. And the skills they learn in such a short period of time really stand them well to go on to a higher education step or pathway in their lives. And not only does it benefit the young people, it also benefits the STEM provider organisations as well. And we get a lot of feedback from the providers who have provided Nuffield placements in the past. The big ones for them is to get a project underway, something that they want done but they don't have time to do themselves, so they can't allocate time for their staff to do. So if they have a ring fence project for a young person to look into with the support of staff, then that's great for them. But it also really helps them understand the education environment. When they have an S5 pupil working with them, they can find out what's being taught in the senior phase, how it's being taught, and it helps them maybe with future recruitment, maybe even looking at apprenticeships, of how is the school setting delivering young people to them at the end of the day. So that's how I'm going to say at the moment. I'm going to pass over now to Laura, who's going to go into details of the programme. So hopefully, Laura, you're able to take control.
Okay, yeah, just remembering to unmute myself, which is always useful. And yes, hopefully you can see a new slide.
Yep, that works. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okie dokie. So yeah, as Aileen introduced me before, I'm Laura, and I'm going to be coordinating the Nuffield research programmes in Scotland. And so she's introduced you to the programme. I'm just going to go into a wee bit more detail on what students can expect to experience in the project, take you through the timeline of the journey, including the application process, what's required from students and what would be required for yourselves, let you know what the eligibility criteria are for students to take part in the programme, and give you an idea of what previous participants have got out of the programme as well. So where do they take place? Placements can take place at a variety of providers from across academia and industry, and can take a variety of forms, including lab projects, computing projects or field research. And providers include universities, research institutes, such as previously University of Glasgow, University of Edinburgh, Starling, and research institutes such as Roslin Institute, Morden Institute, loads of different places. Students can also be placed with supervisors in local government and public sector agencies, and think tanks and market research agencies. And each year a number of students are hosted by providers in industry, such as tech companies, pharmaceutical companies and engineering firms. So hopefully I can move this slide on. Yeah, there we go. So placement supervisors provide each student with a project brief, which forms the outline of the project that the student will undertake. The project briefs are really varied, and we will aim to match research subject areas to the topics of interest of each individual student. So there's just some previous examples of projects that students have completed. So as I said, some students are always placed in industry, and this first student has worked on a project using chemistry and engineering to investigate aluminium in the automotive and aerospace industry. Many students take up biomedical projects, such as those hosted by Roslin and Morden Institutes, and can research topics such as infectious diseases, immunology, and treatment of disease. The University of Stirling has hosted someone to research landscape evolution in the past, And each year there are also social science placements, as Aileen said, and the one offered here where a student has researched what primary children know about the human body. Okie dokie, so those are just some examples of the many different projects that students have the opportunity to get involved in. And now I want to take you through a bit of a timeline of what students can expect if they want to get involved in the programme, and highlight some of the important dates of when different elements occur throughout the next few months. So the first thing to note is that we'll be running a much more detailed session on the application process for students and teachers on the 19th of January, and I'll include a link to that at the end of today's session, and I would encourage all of you to share that with your students. We'll explain the process in more detail then, but I'd also encourage you to share the Nuffield Research Placement website with your students as soon as possible, as there's loads of details on there of how to apply, and this would allow them to begin working on their applications, hopefully over the Christmas holidays. So applications require students to fill in their details and a personal statement, and they also fill in the details of a teacher that they would like to complete a reference for them. And all that needs to be finished by the end of March, when applications will close. We will then go through the applications and make a short list and match those students to the providers which most closely match their interests. And then from May to June time, once students have finished their exams, they can begin online elements of the placement. So this will include the Be Future Ready assignments, as well as some other optional webinars and workshops that will focus on building transferable professional skills. The next portion of the programme is, of course, the research placement itself. And now that we've got on here that it will begin in July, but in Scotland these can also run in June during the end of term. And this gives teachers more options to support and encourage students to attend the placement and avoid things like clashes with last-minute family holidays, that sort of thing. So once the student has carried out their research placement, they'll report their findings in a project write-up and poster, which receives feedback from their supervisors and is uploaded centrally to the system. And we're also planning a celebration event for students to come together and present their work at the end as well. So what are the criteria for student selection? There are 5 main criteria, and students must meet all of these to be eligible to apply for the programme. So they must be over 16 years old and in 5th year at the moment. They must be in full-time state-funded education in the UK. They must have already passed a minimum of 5 national 5s at B grade or above, and these must include maths, a science subject, and English or another humanities subject. They have to be studying at least one of science, technology, engineering, economics, geography, psychology, computing, statistics, or maths at higher level. And they have to be available for a few weeks over the summer to complete the placement. But as I've said, there is some wiggle room on for when this can be carried out. And then they must also meet one of the following criteria to be eligible. So they either have to be care experienced, so having lived or currently living in local authority care, come from a family with a household income of £30,000 or less, be entitled to free school meals either now or at any time in the last 6 years, be entitled to discretionary payments, or be the first in their immediate family to go to university, but this doesn't include siblings. So the first thing to do if a student is interested is tell them to go to the Nuffield Research Placement website, where there's a link to this eligibility calculator that I've taken a wee screenshot of there. Basically, you just put in your details and it lets you know if you would be eligible to apply. So it's best to get that out of the way first so that you know that all the students that you're going to help apply are actually eligible to be involved in the programme. So the programme aims to be as accessible as possible, and there's no cost either to the student or the school to be involved. And to ensure that participating doesn't come at any cost at all to the students or their families, all participants can claim a travel expenses bursary, and most can also claim an additional bursary as well. So what are the requirements of students in the application process? Well, they submit the subject areas that they're interested in, their availability during the summer of next year, and any dietary requirements. They include a personal statement outlining why they want to be involved in the programme, which we recommend being no more than about 500 words. They let us know about any other outside interests or involvement in any other programmes, and they include a bursary application if they are eligible for one of those two. They also submit details of a teacher to provide a reference, and we recommend that this teacher is either the one that they feel knows them best or teaches the subject that they're most interested in. And finally, they need to include permission from a parent or guardian to participate. So then also, what is required of yourselves? As soon as an applicant fills in the details, a teacher message is sent to the teacher that they have popped in the form from the Nuffield application system, inviting them to supply a reference for the student in question. The reference only needs to be a couple of paragraphs long, and really successful references demonstrate that the student has good work ethic and is determined to complete the placement. Oh, I've gone too far forward there. Have I? No. Yes. That they are really determined to complete the placement, and that it will be of great benefit to the student. And if there is an interest in promoting STEM within the school, that's really beneficial as well. So where does CERC fit into all of this? So we're the programme partner, and we promote the programme to schools, such as with events like these, and we also promote it to placement providers to recruit research supervisors for every student and encourage them to become STEM ambassadors. The application all takes place on the Nuffield Research Placement website, which we'll give you a link for at the end of the presentation. Students check their eligibility, as I said before, submit their 4 subject areas they're interested in, and then we use all that information with the student's personal statement and their reference to match each student to a suitable placement that will interest them. We provide support for students and their supervisors throughout the programme, and we'll organise a showcase event to celebrate students completing their placements at the end as well. So then, when students get to the end of their Nuffield placement, there's a few different awards that they could be eligible for as well. One of those is, as Aileen mentioned earlier, the Young STEM Leader Award, which would be at SEQF level 6. Also a Gold Crest Award, and they could be eligible to participate in the Big Bang Fair as well. So then I'm just going to show you a wee video now that's going to showcase some students that have participated in the research programme in the past, and just outlining what they got out of it. So hopefully this will play.
It's a really good experience, and you get a feel of what university research is like.
It gave me an idea of university life.
It's not something we've ever done before.
It's made me think about my options.
And like getting an insight into what it's like to be a scientist.
Now I know what it's like, because when I was there I felt like an undergraduate student. I was treated like an undergraduate student, and that's what really matters. I know what it's like now.
I was really happy because I really wanted to know what it was like to be a scientist, and I couldn't believe it because there's not a lot of people that get placements, and the fact that I did, it was really good. I got to talk to lots of scientists and ask them about the job and how they find it, so that was really interesting. And they told me a lot about how they got to be where they were and the different pathways that I could go down, and it was just good to see what they do on a daily basis as well.
In school you feel like just a student who's studying physics or biology, but there you're researching it and you're breaking new ground. That's really exciting to me.
My name is Professor Daniel Nago. I'm the head of computer science at the University of Bradford. The students are considered generally a valuable resource in terms of being taught and being expected to learn, but I think actually they are more than this, because working in an academic environment for projects, they are able to see the outcome of their work. So they are not just a valuable resource in terms of the impact of the teams, but they're a valuable resource because they provide feedback in the projects as well, and they are users as well as designers of what will be a deliverable of the future.
The content of the projects, it was really interesting. It's quite exciting to be looking at such a prevalent disease.
My project is based on using Twitter and other social medias to find drug dealers and other illegal drugs and fake drugs online. I know now that I could do computer science because I did enjoy the project very much, and it's helped me in such that I have experience with coding now that I never did before. If I go to university to do computer science, I'm no longer completely in the dark about it, which means I have an advantage over other university students, which makes me competitive in applying to universities and stuff.
The biggest challenge in terms of hosting the students for us as the Computing Society were probably just it being something new, really. It was a fantastic experience, but we don't tend to work with students outside university, so just getting used to working with people from younger age groups was good fun, but a challenge at first.
The Nuffield Foundation is great.
I'm really glad I was given the opportunity. I think anyone who wants to get into science in particular should definitely try a placement, because
for the students I think it's a fantastic chance to get some real world experience.
It gave me an idea of university life.
Just getting a bit of independence. And
how many people can say at my age that they've written a 5,000 word report on aviation?
The students were great. They worked really, really well. They were fantastic communicators, especially for their age. So it was great for us just to see people interested in the topics and subjects that we promote and we love doing ourselves.
Really, really proud of what I've done.
So there are loads of benefits to young people participating in the programme, as those young people have just outlined there. And I've just also picked out some common themes from the feedback from last year. So young people enjoyed being able to work at greater depth on the subject that they are passionate about, and they enjoyed working with a professional within that subject area. So placement providers are at the forefront of their subject, and students get to work with really excellent scientists on really cutting edge science. They enjoy getting an insight into what their day-to-day job might be like if they go on to have a career in STEM. They find that really valuable. And students gain loads of different transferable skills that they can use towards a STEM career, and it'll benefit them in anything that they do in the future as well. So similarly, teachers see loads of benefits of the projects too. They provide experiences that students don't generally receive in school, and they report that students improve their work in STEM following a placement and often have increased motivation to pursue a career in STEM and apply for STEM subjects at university. So, speaking of what teachers report, I'm now going to pass over to my colleague Graham Ruff, who in his previous role as Head of Physics at Wallace High has supported a number of students to apply for the placements. So I'm going to stop presenting, and yep, there's Graham there. There we go, so hopefully you can all see Graham now.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks, Aileen. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I know that there's people in here that probably know me or have worked with me before, but my name is Graham Ruff and I work at CERC, and I've been here for 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was a physics teacher at Wallace High School in Stirling, and I kind of fell into supporting the Nuffield process at Wallace. It was previously done by one of my colleagues in chemistry, and if I remember rightly, I think it was through maternity leave that I ended up picking it up and looking after some people. And before I go into some of the, because my role today is just purely anecdotal and reflective, and maybe hopefully provide some tips that would be useful to you if you're going to run Nuffield in your school. And I know many of you already have in advance of CERC taking over the contract. My most recent memory of Nuffield was actually in Glasgow not too long ago when I bumped into a former pupil who had actually been on a Nuffield placement. And I remember that he worked on the iris retinal scanning. And for some weird reason, I bumped into him and I was saying to him, CERC's taken over. He knew I'd left school, and I said, CERC's taken over the Nuffield research placement, and you did that. And he still says that it was the best thing he ever did. So the timing was perfect. Maybe it was fate that I bumped into him in George Square that day, but that's what he said, that it was the best thing he ever done at Strathclyde University, working on the iris retinal security scanning at airports. In terms of what a Nuffield placement is, I would advise you to stick to the three main areas of the three main principles of it, which are eligibility, support and questions. And in terms of what a young person is going to do, it's young people that have completed their National 5s. They're moving on to hopefully do hires. They've completed their hires and they're hopefully moving on to do their advanced hires. And it's at that transition summer period between S5 and going into S6. They're going to go into a higher education institute, or they're going to go into a STEM industry provider. And that's quite a new part of Nuffield, because only 3-4 years ago, everyone went into one of the institutes. Laura already mentioned the Modern Institute, Royal Societies, or going to a university, but there's now more and more STEM providers coming online. And what they're really going to do is a meaningful STEM research placement for 2 weeks. They're not going to do work experience, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with work experience, but they're going to do research, a research placement in STEM. And what they're going to do is they're going to develop their skills and their understanding of STEM concepts, and obviously build their employability as well, and hopefully get an understanding of what's out there, what opportunities are out there for them, whether it's in higher education or in an industry. I would also say, think about eligibility from your point of view. Laura mentioned the calculator as well. There are so many useful tools on the Nuffield website, and there's lots of good information there. It really is a rich website in the sense that you can go there and pretty much learn everything you need to know, whether you're a young person, the parent or carer of that potential Nuffield research placement participant, or if you're a teacher as well. So please do use that and use the eligibility calculator. It's good to actually make sure that before someone applies that they're not actually wasting their time and they meet the criteria for application. You as a teacher to support them through the application process as well, and be an advocate of the programme and to promote it, and let the young people in your school know that you, and ideally some of your colleagues there as well, are there to really help them through the application process and see them off into their placement, and also help them when they return to reflect on hopefully the successes that they've had during their time on a Nuffield placement as well. And I've got some ideas about how you can do that. But before I do that, I'll go to the third principle, which is really questions. And that's what we're here to do. Laura, my colleague, is going to manage the process here, working with Aileen and I. But that's what CERC's here for. And I'm sure you recognise CERC as being a body for professional learning and support for all educators in Scotland. So we will be here to support you all the way through the programme to get your young people onto the placement. Some ideas that I would suggest that worked for me when I was back at school is I would consider running an S5 assembly early in the new year, but I wouldn't do it to a whole year group as well. So I would be quite targeted about that. So I would put some communications out to your senior phase students. You can ask for leaflets from CERC. We can send stuff out to you, whether your school's got a tannoy or a PA system, and you can just start to plant the seed for the young people. You could maybe have a whole year group assembly, and then maybe say there'll be a follow-up one next week for interested students, but it's probably not going to be appropriate to present to all S5 in a one-hour. And again, I would just start the filtering process for eligible candidates straight away. I would definitely look for support from your fellow colleagues as well. It's not an enormous job being the Nuffield person in school, but I think sending out a message, let's say you're a chemistry teacher, talk to your pals in science, get some maths teachers, anybody else, and it's probably better to be a smaller group as well. And also when you get to the reference stage, you might have a young person that's applied for a Nuffield placement in your school. You might never have taught them. You know, we do have those young people who just go through school and they never seem to fall into your classroom, but your colleague in maths might have them all the way through Nat 5s, hires, etc. So they'd be much better placed to do their reference. So I would definitely look into that. I also think the message that you send out to the young people is that you see yourselves as a group of STEM educators rather than being siloed and, you know, one teacher in chemistry runs Nuffield. So it's not always a good message to send out if we're trying to promote STEM learning. I would also try and coordinate with other schools as well, and I know that's not always easy. I was quite lucky in Stirling that we had sort of relationships with our close by schools up the road in Dunblane and St Modens and Bannockburn, etc. But, you know, for example, if we're going to come to you, it would probably make sense to have the eligible candidates in your school, and ideally the eligible candidates in neighbouring schools as well, and really maximise the impact that we can have and who we speak to. And as I said, just be that person or be that small group of people within your school who represent STEM and represent an amazing STEM opportunity for young people. In terms of what's expected of you for the reference, you will be emailed. So the young person will ask you for an email address and give them your work email address, and they'll submit that at the application stage when they submit their personal statement. And then what will happen is you'll start to get emails coming through telling you that one of your students has submitted an application. That's often the point where you think, what have I done? And I've now got 8 references to fill in, but please don't be disheartened by that point. And the reference really asks you to provide some supporting commentary around that young person's motivation, enthusiasm and likelihood to really complete on one of these placements. It also asks you to check over their results. So if my memory is correct, they will have put in the courses that they're doing and the grades they got at National 5 and the predicted grades that they'll have for hire. That may have changed, and we're obviously new to this system. Obviously it's predicted grades because the application stage is pre-summer, so you will be asked to check that over, but I do believe they ask for their predicted and working grades and the subjects that they're going on to do as well. My advice would also be to have a read through their personal statement. I believe you will see their personal statement at the reference stage as well, and have a look through that and you can give them some feedback on it as well. And I would often learn a wee bit more about the young people when I read their personal statement as well. My final bit of advice, and this would be working with CERC and your school, is we'll try to have the placements actually begin before the summer holidays do. And what that does is it gives us that bit of contact. I know that's not always possible with timetabling, but if we can start our placements and have our young people joining the HEIs or the STEM industry provider, then it gives us a bit of contact rather than they're already on their summer holiday. It's hard to contact them. At least this way we have a school office to phone if there's any issues. And also just another way of approaching it is not to start the placement on a Monday and potentially start the placement on a Wednesday. And that gives us a couple of days of contact time, prep time, to make sure everyone's ready to go. And that's all for me. My final comment really is just to embrace this amazing opportunity to get young people out there into that STEM landscape outside of school and really understand what's available to them. And like everything else in STEM education, CERC will do its best to support you through the process. So I'll hand back to Laura and Aileen, and I really hope my information, although anecdotal and maybe a wee bit out of date, was useful in some way to you.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks. I'll just share the presentation again for Laura to be able to wrap up. Graham obviously will be around for answering any questions. If I can just start this presentation again. I think it hasn't gone to the end, has it? Oh. Let me just, I'll flick through it quickly and we'll get to Graham's part. I know some people joined us late on the call, so that we will send out the recording of this to everybody that's here. And you certainly can, in case you've missed anything or you want to see the slides. And I'll just let Laura wrap up with some more information. Thanks.
Fantastic, thanks Aileen. So hopefully everyone can see a wee screenshot there of the Nuffield research placements slide. So that's the screenshot from the homepage of the website with the address there, nuffieldresearchplacements.org. As Graham said, that's kind of where all the main information that you're going to need is. It's where you can find the link to the eligibility calculator, and it's where you can start doing the applications as well. So another way that you can get more information is our next event, which is going to be a more detailed session on application information, and that's going to be on the 19th of January, and that QR code there will take you to that, but I can send that link out as well. And if you do think of any questions after this session, that's my email address there. As I say, I'm going to be coordinating the Nuffield research placements. But before then, if anyone has any questions at the moment, I will open up to